Poison-type Pokemon are often viewed as one of the weakest types in the franchise. Most of that reputation is due to their low base stats and poor performance in the earlier generations. But today, I'm going to give them a chance to show the world there's more to them than meets the eye. This is my attempt at beating a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon Black 2 using only Poison-type Pokemon. As always, a full list of the rules will be in the description down below, but in short, I can only use Poison-type Pokemon in battle, I can't use items in battle, and I can't overlevel my Pokemon. Let's get started. It's a beautiful day in Aspertia City, but instead of being outside and playing, I'm standing in the middle of my room and staring at the wall. My mom comes home and breaks me out of my trance, then proceeds to ask me a few questions, one of which demonstrates just how little faith she has in my intelligence. Like any responsible mother, she sends her seemingly mentally unfit child off to get a Pokemon. In most games, there's at least one poison type available prior to the first gym, but surprisingly, there isn't one in this game. I decided the best way to solve this problem was to replace Snivy with a Grimer, as it's only available in the Castelia sewers, which would conflict with another possible encounter anyways. I name him Ivan Ooze, and he has a quiet nature, which is plus special attack and minus speed. That's pretty rough, but at least Muck does have access to some interesting special type moves later on, so it's not a total loss, I guess. After defeating Hugh, we head off on our adventure. It gets off to a bit of a weird start when I'm stopped by Alder, who does a superhero landing, then circles me like a predator hunting its prey. I head back to Aspertia City so I can take on the first gym. Facing Charon with only one Pokemon is a bit of a challenge. I can't just spam Pound and hope to outdamage his team, as they both know the move Work Up. I figure my best bet is to try and set up as many Hardens as I can. But before that, I go for Poison Gas so Patrat takes damage every turn as I boost our defense. He doesn't seem interested in going for Work Up though, only going for one as I set up 5 Hardens. This means Ivan Ooze is only at 17 HP after leveling up as Lillipup comes in. I was hoping to poison it, but I think we're too low, so instead I start going for Mud Slap, hoping to lower its accuracy enough to avoid being hit, especially since he's setting up workups. I manage to land 3 before he switches to Tackle, which misses. The 5th Mud Slap manages to get a crit, but I'm not sure Pound is going to KO from here, so I stick with Mud Slap, which seems to be paying dividends as Lillipup has yet to land a hit. Unfortunately, this does put it into potion range as I switch to Pound. Lillipup finally hits a Tackle and takes Ivan Ooze to just 7 HP. One more hit would take him out, but Tackle misses once again, and we're able to finish off Lillipup and earn our first badge. After defeating Charon, I can add a few new members to the team. I catch a Venipede that I name Kagome, then in Verbank Complex I catch a Coughing that I name Fat Mac. Fat Mac has Levitate, which will really help alleviate the ground type weakness, so he's going to be pretty important. The second gym leader is our biggest rival in Unova, the poison type gym leader Roxy. I lead with Kagome versus her Coughing and go for Defense Curl. Not only will this bulk her up a bit, but now her rollout is twice as strong. The first hit still manages to do very little as Coughing has great defense. Then her third attempt misses. I decide to stay in and start over and 2 more rollouts take down Coughing, but not before she activated our berry, which brought Kagome back to 26 HP. Whirlipede comes in but gets outsped and obliterated with a super effective rollout, proving that I am the most powerful poison type trainer in the region. With the nightmare that is Pokestar Studios now out of the picture, we're off to the big city. From Castelia, there are a few new Pokemon available to add to the squad. North of the city in the desert, I found a literal pile of garbage, so I named her after a different pile of garbage. I try to challenge Berg to a battle, but he's not at the gym. Clearly he's afraid of us. Now that I've got some time to kill, I follow Iris to the dock, where she suggests that I go into the sewer. I'm sure nothing bad can happen to me down there. I go with Hugh just in case I need to use him as a human shield, but forgot to use Repel, so I run into a Zubat in a double battle. Thankfully he doesn't kill it, and I'm able to catch her and name her Juliet. After defeating Team Plasma, I get out of the sewer, then get ready to take on Berg. Because the level cap is at 24, I'm able to evolve Kagome and Juliet. I also ran around the city like a lunatic so I can fully evolve Juliet into a Crobat, which is one of my favorite Pokemon to use in a Nuzlocke. Berg is finally done avoiding me and sends out Swadloon, and Juliet easily knocks it out with a wing attack. He sends in Dwebble next, so I decide to swap into Fat Mac, who tanks a Smackdown with ease. We trade a few Smackdowns and Sludges back and forth, but eventually Fat Mac prevails and knocks it out. Last is Leavanny, so it's back into Juliet, who shrugs off a cut, then gets the KO with a completely unnecessary crit from Wing Attack. I see why Berg was so afraid to face us. North of Castelia, I run into Colress, who's actually one of the most difficult trainers for us to deal with since he has Steel-type Pokemon. Thankfully, Ivan Ooze is able to learn the move Mud Bomb, which activates Magnemite's Sturdy ability. He uses a Super Potion, but a Pound and a second Mud Bomb is able to knock out Magnemite. He sends in Clink, who uses Charge, and a Mud Bomb doesn't do much. After a gear grind, a second Mud Bomb takes Clink to about a third. I know Ivan Ooze can survive a non-critical hit, and most of the team doesn't have any moves that can deal with it, so I stay in and he gets taken to just 4 HP. Then a Mud Bomb just misses a KO. Now I have to switch, so I send in Juliet hoping to bait out a Thunder Shock on the following turn. But he just goes for charge as I swap into Kagome. She then finishes it off with a Bug Bite. We make it through the desert and get to Nimbasa City, and before taking on the gym, I have yet another encounter. In the Lostlorn Forest, I catch a Roselia that I name Axel. He has an adamant nature, which is plus attack and minus special attack, which is basically the worst possible nature he could have. With the level cap at 30, Kagome is able to evolve into a Scolipede, which is a pretty solid Pokemon, and with that, it's time to take on Alessa. She sends out a pile of garbage, so I do the same. Her Emolga hits a Volt Switch and sends out Flaffy as I go for Stockpile. Velma can outspeed Flaffy and get off a second Stockpile before being hit with another Volt Switch back into Emolga. She does the same switch again and I go for Sludge Bomb, which does just under half but manages to poison Flaffy. That makes the second bringer to a Sliver, but because she hung on, she got off a Thunder Wave before going down to the poison. Emolga comes back in, but only for a moment as it once again Volt Switches to Zebstrika, who gets hit with a Sludge Bomb and also gets poisoned. She gets hit with Pursuit but gets fully paralyzed. A second Pursuit hits, but she's able to use Swallow and heal back to 60 HP. Zebstrika then gets a critical hit Volt Switch, which brings Velma to just 3 HP, then she gets fully paralyzed. This is awful. Emolga has Pursuit, but it also has Quick Attack. If I stay in, Velma is most certainly dead, so I have to switch and hope she doesn't go for Pursuit. I make the switch, and Velma escapes with her life as Kagome comes in on a Quick Attack. I go for Defense Curl and Alessa hits yet another critical hit and takes Kagome to just 29 HP, so now I have to switch again. I was hoping she would go for a Flame Charge, so I swap into Fat Mac, but she goes for a Volt Switch which takes him to just 27 HP. I send in Axel expecting another Volt Switch and he tanks it well. Her Zebstrika taking poison damage every time it's swapped in is the only thing giving us a chance right now. I swap into Juliet once again expecting a Flame Charge, but she goes for Pursuit instead and takes Axel to just 17 HP. Unfortunately, the poison brings her into Hyper Potion range and Bite doesn't do much. I can't risk Juliet, so I swap into Ivan Ooze and now Alessa decides to go for a Flame Charge. Unbelievable. I don't want to risk a Mud Bomb miss and I can't go for Dig in case she swaps to Emolga, so after tanking a Quick Attack, he hits a Sludge Bomb which brings Zebstrika low. Then the poison finishes it off. All she has left is Emolga, who takes Ivan Ooze to just 11 HP with a Volt Switch. Then he hits a Sludge Bomb and yet again we get a clutch poison activation. I'm in a similar situation to before. If I stay in, Ivan Ooze will surely die, but if I switch and it's Pursuit, he's done for also. I have to take the chance, so I switch again and Alessa once again fails to use Pursuit and goes for Quick Attack. Juliet is able to hit a Bite and get the KO, earning us the 4th badge after some seriously close calls. I can't believe everyone made it out alive. After Hugh drags me into a fight with Team Plasma that I didn't ask to be involved in, I cross the bridge and make it to Driftvale City where I have a battle with Rude. Normally I wouldn't cover this battle, but he happens to have a Swoobat which is part Psychic type, and no one on the team can really handle them. Thankfully, due to Juliet's bulk, she can tank a hit reasonably well, and then take it out with a couple of bites. We have a few good answers to Ground-type Pokemon, but Psychic types are going to be an issue. Because Poison types are so common, it won't surprise you to know that I have yet another encounter. A Fungus that I catch and I name Pedro Pascal. As I mentioned earlier, we do have quite a few answers for Ground-type Pokemon, but Clay's Ground and Steel-type Excadrill is certainly no joke. I lead with Axel versus Krokorok, who can still get a one-hit KO with Giga Drain on both Krokorok and Sandslash in spite of his lower special attack. Excadrill comes in and hits a Slash. Then a Giga Drain does just under half. A crit would KO Axel, but I'm willing to take the risk and stay in and go for a Leech Seed, but a second Slash doesn't get the crit and Leech Seed activates his Citrus Berry. Axel might be able to survive another non-critical hit, but this time I don't feel like pushing my luck, so I swap into Fat Mac as he goes for a Bulldoze which doesn't affect him. Then he avoids a Rock Slide, but he can only hit a weak return in retaliation. He tanks a Slash and hits an Assurance, but thanks to the leftovers and Leech Seed he heals back quite a bit of the damage he took. I switch back to Axel on the heal turn knowing I can get back some more HP with Leech Seed and be out of non-critical hit KO range. Metal Claw takes him to just 22 HP, but Giga Drain and Leech Seed bring Axel back up to 63. We avoid another critical hit from Slash, then get a crit of our own with Giga Drain to knock out Excadrill and earn us the 5th badge. After some more Team Plasma nonsense, I'm able to evolve Fat Mac into a Weezing. We make it through Chargestone Cave and get to Mistral City, where we have yet another encounter. After running around for a while, I finally run into a Seviper that I catch and I name Nagini. With the lucky egg I got from Professor Juniper, it's easier to level up the team before taking on the next gym, which allows me to evolve Ivan Ooze and Velma. Now it's time to take on Skyla. She leads with a Swoobat and I send in the only one that can deal with her in Juliet. In hindsight, I should have chased around dust clouds in order to get a dark gem to boost her bite, but clearly I was too lazy for all of that. So after a bite takes her low, Juliet tanks a heart stamp and then gets a KO on the following turn with another bite. Swanna comes in, so I go for fly, which activates Swanna's citrus berry. Then she hits an air slash. Juliet is a bit low, so I swap into Velma, who gets hit with 2 air slashes, and flinches on the second one. That's not great. Now I have to switch again, so I send in Ivan Ooze, who's holding leftovers. Swanna hits a feather dance and a sludge wave takes her into heal range. A second sludge wave does over half. Then a third lands a critical hit now that it's too late for that to matter, and gets the KO. Last is her Skarmory, which is quite a problem for the team. I swap into Fat Mac, who avoids a Steel Wing, then hits a Will-O-Wisp to burn Skarmory. Fat Mac gets crit by an air cutter and then hits a weak return. A second air cutter connects, but the burn damage is chipping away at Skarmory. I switch to Ivan Ooze, who lands a Rock Tomb. Then the burn finishes off Skyla's last Pokemon, earning us the victory. If Fat Mac couldn't learn Will-O-Wisp, I'm not sure what I would have done to deal with Skarmory. After defeating Skyla, we hop onto her plane and fly over to Lentamos Town, where I can finally address the psychic weakness and get our next encounter. I catch him and I name him Don Draper. He quickly evolves into a Drapion. Then shortly after arriving in Undella Town, I find a Shiny Stone so I can evolve Axel into a Roserade. It's been a while since I've mentioned Hugh, but it's finally time for another battle with him. He leads with Unfezant, who spams Detect, then goes for a Razor Wind, which crits, before going down to 2 Sludge Waves from Ivan Ooze. Emboar comes in and hits a takedown, then a Dig brings him low. For whatever reason, I decided to stay in here and Ivan Ooze gets taken down to just 7 HP. That was pretty silly. Fortunately, he survives, but Hugh goes for a Hyper Potion, so now I have to switch. I send in Fat Mac, who gets hit with a takedown, then outspeeds and gets the KO with Return. Simipour comes in, so I swap into Axel, who gets burned from Scald. That doesn't end up mattering though, as Giga Drain is a one-hit KO. The path to Opelucid City is a long one, but it's pretty uneventful, aside from being jumped by a legendary Pokemon. Once there, I'm greeted by Iris, who wishes me luck for the upcoming battle against Grandpa. Before taking him on, I head back to the Move Tutor so I can teach Ice Fang to Don Draper. Drayden's team can be a bit tricky, especially if his Haxorus gets off a few Dragon Dances. I lead with Fat Mac versus Druddigon and go for a Will-O-Wisp, which connects. A Revenge does little to Fat Mac as his leftovers completely heals him. With the burn damage, Return is now a 2-hit KO. I would love to send in Don Draper against his Flygon, but it knows Earth Power and outspeeds him, so I stay in with Fat Mac, who misses a Will-O-Wisp. A second one connects, and then he gets hit with the Dragon Tail, which brings in Don Draper anyway. Anticipating an Earth Power, I swap back into Fat Mac, who is unaffected. He gets hit with a Crunch, which gets the defense drop. Then Drayden goes for a Hyper Potion on the following turn. Fat Mac avoids a Rock Slide. Then Return and Burn damage bring Flygon low. Then Fat Mac outspeeds thanks to Flygon going for Dragon Tail and gets the KO with Return. Clearly Grandpa is getting forgetful in his old age. Haxorus comes in and goes for a Dragon Dance, which is pretty scary, but Fat Mac comes up clutch and lands a Will-O-Wisp on the first try. I swap into Don Draper on the following turn, but he gets yeeted immediately by a Dragon Tail and brings Fat Mac back in. Because he also has high defense and is no longer affected by the defense drop, I decide to stay in and go for Return, which activates his Citrus Berry after he sets up another Dragon Dance. He goes for a third and Return takes him low. Then Fat Mac avoids a critical hit from Slash and knocks out Haxorus, earning us the win. As we exit Drayden's house, Team Plasma shows up and freezes Opelucid City.
Who left the fridge open?
Drayden then has his Dragon-type Pokemon inspect the ice. I'm starting to see why you lost to us. After defeating Zinzalin, I head back to Undella Town and through the Marine Tube and get to Humalao City. It's time to take on the final gym. I send out Axel versus Caracosta. It has Sturdy, so I opt to go for Shadow Ball, but it crits and gets the special defense drop, which will put him into heal range. Thankfully he goes for Crunch instead of Shell Smash, so on the following turn a Giga Drain heals Axel back to full, and he also gets another critical hit. Save those for the rest of his team, buddy. His Wailord comes in and Giga Drain is a one-hit KO. Last is his Jellicent. Giga Drain does about 2/3 and activates his Citrus Berry. Then he hits an Ominous Wind, but no Omni Boost, so Axel gets the KO on the following turn, earning us the 8th and final badge. The battle against Marlin was pretty easy, but the upcoming battles against Team Plasma present a much bigger challenge. After mowing down an endless barrage of Plasma Grunts, I finally make it to the double battle with Zinzalin, but Hugh and I handle it with ease. I head to the Giant Chasm and Zinzalin embarrasses himself one final time.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
Then I finally get to one of the actual challenges of this run, the final battle with Colress and his Steel types. He leads with Magneton, so I send out Kagome, who I've taught the move Dig. Unfortunately, Magneton has Sturdy, so he survives and then hits a Thunder Wave. Kagome hits a Steamroller to break Sturdy after the full restore. Then she gets hit with a Volt Switch and he sends in Magnezone. Kagome goes underground, then his Magnezone goes for Explosion and takes itself out. Way to go, genius. Behemoth comes in, so I swap into Don Draper on the Psychic. We both take the opportunity to set up Stat Boost, and on the following turn a Night Slash gets the KO. Kling Klang comes out, but it's holding an air balloon, so I pop it with a Night Slash as he sets up shift gears. Then Don Draper goes underground with Dig. He just misses a KO, which is rough because Kling Klang is at +3 speed and attack, and on the following turn hits a Giga Impact, which Don Draper tanks to just 14 HP. That was close. He's able to finish it off on the next turn with a Dig after narrowly escaping death. Metang comes in, so I swap into Fat Mac, who gets hit with a Rock Slide. He hits a Will-O-Wisp, which has been really clutch for us so far. Metang misses a Zen Headbutt, and Fat Mac hits an Assurance. He then easily tanks a Zen Headbutt thanks to his high defense and the burn. Then he avoids another Zen Headbutt and gets the KO with an Assurance and burn damage. His Magneton comes back in, so I swap to Axel, who gets hit with a Thunder Wave immediately. Then he tanks a Flash Cannon and hits a Leech Seed. Then I swap into Ivan Ooze on another Flash Cannon. He gets hit with another and then goes for Dig, which gets the KO and wins us the battle. Thankfully we have some decent type coverage, otherwise he would have been a bit of a nightmare to deal with. I head to the command center and finally find the man who's behind all of this, Getsis. I chase him into a cave, then he summons Kyurem and... Whoa. Wait a minute, man. We could talk about this. It's not that serious, I promise. Before I'm impaled with shards of ice, N flies in to save my life. Then Getsis creates an abomination of a Pokemon that I have to defeat before battling him. Don Draper is able to take it out, which clearly irritates Getsis less than me just following him into the cave because instead of trying to murder me, he just battles me. He leads with Kofagrigus, who's a 2-hit KO with Night Slash from Don Draper. Seismitoad comes in, so I swap into Fat Mac on the Earthquake, then swap to Axel on the Muddy Water. He's then able to outspeed and get the KO with Giga Drain. Electros comes in, so I switch back into Fat Mac on the Acrobatics. Then he picks the worst time to finally miss a Will-O-Wisp and gets hit with a Thunderbolt to just 41 HP after the leftovers heal. Now I have to switch, so I send in Ivan Ooze, who tanks a Flamethrower. A Thunderbolt activates his Citrus Berry, then he hits a Sludge Wave, which doesn't do much. An Acrobatics does decent damage, then a Sludge Wave takes Electros low. I have to switch again, so I send in Don Draper as Getsis uses a full restore. I probably should have gone for another Sludge Wave there, but oh well. Don Draper then gets a critical hit from Night Slash, which obliterates Electros thanks to his sniper ability. He sends in his own Drapion, but his has Earthquake, so I have to switch. So I send in Juliet, but he went for Night Slash instead. I swap to Kagome on another Night Slash, then she outspeeds and hits a Bulldoze to lower his speed. She can live another non-critical hit, and I don't really have a great switch, so I stay in and he hits another Bulldoze, which takes Drapion to the red. Then Kagome survives a Night Slash at just 20 HP and takes down Drapion on the next turn. Hydreigon comes in and I swap to Axel, which in hindsight was a terrible idea with his poor defense, and a Crunch takes him to just 21 HP. I swap into Don Draper, who gets hit with a Rock Slide. Then he survives a Dragon Rush at just 8 HP and hits an Ice Fang, which takes Hydreigon below a third. The team's in pretty rough shape here. The only one who's still healthy is Juliet. I send her in and she tanks a Dragon Rush to just 19 HP, but I taught her the move X Scissor, and thanks to her incredible speed and his Life Orb damaging him, she can take it down. Last is his Toxicroak. Juliet goes for a Fly, which thankfully doesn't miss and gets the KO, and with that, Getsis is defeated. That battle was very close to being tragic. I probably should have made a sacrifice to get a clean switch at some point, but fortunately my greed went unpunished. After defeating Getsis, I head to Victory Road, and as I'm just about ready to exit and head up to the Pokemon League, I'm confronted by Hugh one last time. I send out Ivan Ooze versus Unfezant, and he gets hit with a Swagger, but he breaks through and lands a Rock Slide for the KO. He sends in his Bouffalant, so I swap into Fat Mac expecting an Earthquake, but he goes for Head Charge and takes Fat Mac below half. I don't have a good switch, so I go for a risky play. I go for Will-O-Wisp to lower his attack so Fat Mac can survive another Head Charge, and thankfully it connects, and he survives at just 27 HP. The burn also allows me to switch into Don Draper without worrying about taking too much damage from another Head Charge. I recorded this attempt a little while ago, and for the life of me, I cannot figure out why I stayed in with Don Draper here, but Hugh goes for another Head Charge instead of Earthquake, so it ended up working out for me, although that probably wasn't very smart. Hugh uses a Max Potion instead of a full restore, and Don Draper lands another Night Slash. I swap into Ivan Ooze on a Head Charge, then swap into Kagome for yet another Head Charge. She can actually outspeed and knocks it out on the following turn. Emboar comes in, so I swap into Ivan Ooze on the Flamethrower, but he gets burned. Now I have to switch to Juliet on another Flamethrower. She goes for Fly, which is strong enough to get the KO. Last is his Simipour, so I swap into Axel, who's literally only here for this exact moment. He tanks a Surf, then gets a KO with a Giga Drain. Once he was defeated, he apologized for trying to knock out one of my team members right before the Elite Four by giving me the TM for Thunderbolt. I decide to stick with the same 6 for the Elite Four. I get them up to the level cap and head back to the move tutor so I can teach Ivan Ooze Ice Punch, and now we're ready to take on the Elite Four. I decide to start off against Grimsley. I send out Juliet versus Liepard, and because of her inner focus ability, she avoids a flinch from Fake Out and gets the KO with X Scissor. Scrafty comes in and Juliet outspeeds and hits a fly and just misses a KO. Then she gets hit with a rock tomb. She hits an X scissor as he goes for a full restore. Then a fly takes it out on the following turn. Crocodile comes in and hits Juliet with an intimidate, so I swap into Fat Mac on a crunch. He tanks another and then hits a Will-O-Wisp. I swap into Axel on another crunch. Then he gets hit to just 38 HP with an Earthquake, but a Giga Drain gets the KO and heals him back up. Bisharp comes in, so I swap into Ivan Ooze on an Aerial Ace, then Kagome on a Night Slash. She outspeeds and uses 4x super effective superpower to get the KO. 1 down. Grimsley was always going to be the easiest to deal with, and after him I decide to take on Chantal second. I send out Axel vs Sarcophagus as he knows the move Shadow Ball. It's not going to be a one-hit KO, but it does decent damage. But then Cofagrigus hits a critical hit Psychic and takes Axel to just 10 HP. Man, that was close. Chantal goes for a full restore, but 2 more Shadow Balls take down Cofagrigus. She sends in her Chandelure, so I swap into Don Draper, who tanks a Shadow Ball. Thankfully he can outspeed, and this time around I made sure to chase around Dust Cloud so a Dark Gem boosted Night Slash gets the KO. Golurk is next, so I swap into Fat Mac on an Earthquake. Then rinse and repeat the same old Will-O-Wisp strategy. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. The combination of burn and a few hits from Assurance take out Golurk, and then she sends in her Drifblim. I swap back into Don Draper on the Psychic. Then he outspeeds and lands a Night Slash that just misses a KO. The second one gets a crit now that it's too late, and while I know he had enough HP to survive the Aftermath ability, it's still not fun watching his HP get down to just 12. 2 down. Of the 2 remaining members, you would think the lesser evil would be Marshall, but instead I opt to battle Caitlyn and her Psychic-type Pokemon. She leads with a Musharna, and I send out the only one on the team that can deal with Psychic types. A Night Slash does over half, but he gets hit with a Yawn, so I swap into Axel on a Charge Beam. Then a Shadow Ball is able to finish off Musharna. She sends out Sigilift, so I swap back into Don Draper on a Psychic. He's able to outspeed and bring it to the red with a Night Slash, then gets hit with an Air Slash. She uses a full restore, so I go for Hone Claws on the heal turn. Then a Night Slash does enough to get the KO a second time around. Reuniclus comes in, but at just +1 she survives in the red and then hits a Focus Blast, but Don Draper avoids a crit and takes it down on the following turn. Gothitelle comes in and survives a Night Slash as well, but goes for Calm Mind. Even with the Citrus Berry heal, she can't take another and goes down to another Night Slash. Without Don Draper, she would have been a lot more of a problem, although the team does at least have good offensive type coverage for Psychic types. The last Elite Four member is Marshall. I've always thought Poison type moves should be super effective against fighting Pokemon since they resist fighting attacks, so I plan to take out my anger for this injustice on his team. I lead with Axel versus Throw and go for a Leech Seed. He then proceeds to get crit with a Bulldoze, but the combination of Leech Seed and Leftovers keeps Axel healthy. Then a Giga Drain on the next turn brings him close to full again. Because of the speed drops, Throw outspeeds him and hits a Storm Throw. Then Axel's Giga Drain takes Throw to a Sliver and Leech Seed finishes him off. Mienshao comes in, so I swap into Fat Mac as he goes for Bounce. Fat Mac avoids Paralysis, then does what he always does and lands a Will-O-Wisp. I swap into Axel, but he goes for another Bounce, so I swap back into Fat Mac to tank it. This time I send in Juliet and he goes for Bounce again. Juliet outspeeds though and gives him a taste of his own medicine by going for Fly, which is able to knock it out. Conkeldurr comes in and this thing is a serious threat. I decide to go for Confuse Ray hoping for some good luck, and he does hurt himself in confusion. Juliet avoids a Stone Edge while in the air, and Fly takes Conkeldurr into berry range. She lands and he breaks through confusion but misses a Stone Edge, which is pretty lucky, although she could have survived a non-crit. She lands one more Fly to get the KO, and then he sends in Sawk, who has the Sturdy ability. I decide to break Sturdy with Bite, hoping for a flinch, but he doesn't. Then he hits a Rock Slide, which does about half. From here, Juliet can hit one last Fly for the KO, earning us the victory over the Elite Four. All that stands in our way is the champion. I've been pretty lucky to make it this far deathless, that's for sure. However, I also feel like the strength of these poison Pokemon has clearly been on display. They deserve more respect. I don't think that deathless streak will continue though, as I head up the giant flight of stairs to face the champion, Iris. Her team is fierce, but I think we're ready to take her on. She leads with a Hydreigon and I send in Juliet. She outspeeds and lands an X-Scissor which does over half, then tanks a Dragon Pulse. A second X-Scissor is able to knock it out, then she sends in Lapras. I swap to Ivan Ooze, but Lapras just goes for Sing, which misses. She hits an Ice Beam on the following turn, then Ivan Ooze gets a critical hit Rock Slide and gets the KO. Aggron comes in, so I swap into Fat Mac anticipating an Earthquake, but she goes for a double team. Then Fat Mac does exactly what you're expecting him to do. Thanks to Leftovers, Fat Mac can heal back up while dishing out some damage with Flamethrowers until Aggron gets taken out. Her Haxorus comes in and hits a Dual Chop which takes Fat Mac to just 23 HP, an amount he wouldn't have had without the Leftovers coming in clutch. Then Fat Mac hits yet another Will-O-Wisp. Unfortunately, the legend himself is going to have to make the ultimate sacrifice. He gets hit with a Dual Chop and goes down. Rest in peace, my thick king. This allows for a clean switch into Ivan Ooze, who even without being fully healthy can tank an Earthquake thanks to Fat Mac's final burn. He then hits an Ice Punch which does less than I anticipated and brings Haxorus into full restore range, which is really bad. Ivan Ooze hits another Ice Punch, but now I have to switch. I send in Juliet on an Earthquake, then go for Confuse Ray and get good luck as she hurts herself in Confusion. Juliet outspeeds and goes for Fly, then Haxorus hurts itself in Confusion again, and Juliet is able to take it out with Fly. That was pretty lucky. Drudagon comes in, so I swap into Don Draper, who gets hit with a Rock Slide. He goes for Ice Fang, which does minimal damage, then he gets nailed with a Focus Blast. I swap into Juliet hoping he goes for another Focus Blast, but he switches to Flamethrower instead. I figured it worked on her other dragon, so why not this one? I go for Confuse Ray, which does indeed cause Drudagon to hurt itself in Confusion. Now she's in range to be taken out with Fly, which connects and knocks it out. Archops comes in, so I try my luck with Confuse Ray again, and unbelievably it works again. Juliet then hits a critical hit Bite, which puts Archops into Defeatist. Then it hurts itself in Confusion again. I'm starting to see why they went extinct in the first place. Juliet finishes it off on the following turn and earns us the victory in what might be one of the luckiest champion battles I've ever had in my life. When I started this run, I expected to lose a few team members along the way. With a decent amount of encounters, I was expecting to dip into the remaining Pokemon in the PC at some point, but this team really pulled through in a big way. The lone death on the team also came from one of the stars that got us to the finish line. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like, and if you want to see more content like this, consider subscribing to the channel as well, as it really helps me out a lot. It's time for me to head out. Thanks for watching, and I'll smell you later.